Are you looking to build a gaming PC with a budget of $650? Well, a white gaming PC, but you just figured, hey, my budget is just not good enough. Well, this video is just meant for you. In this video, I'm gonna be crafting a 650 white gaming PC that can play in a gaming 1080p and maybe some 1440p in some games like GTA 5 or maybe Minecraft. Now, before I get right into it, if you're interested in these parts I'm going to mention right now, I've dropped a link in the description down below. They're very good for my channel. When you buy those stuff, I get a little bit of cash that can be very much useful for my channel. Now, let's get right into it. So this is gonna be our build right here. For CPU, I went with a Ryzen 5 5500. This is my favorite CPU, by the way. It's my favorite CPU basically because I have a Ryzen 5 5500. Right now, I'm gaming on the Ryzen 5 5500. This is a very fantastic CPU just in case you want to do video editing, streaming, and gaming, of course. Right now, this CPU is $83 on Amazon, and you can also find it on Newegg at around the same price. This CPU is very reliable. Either you go with this 5500 or you go with the 3600, but I would always prefer the 5500 basically because it's a little bit more powerful than the 3600 and somewhere around behind an i5 12400F. And one thing I like about this CPU is that it has 6 cores instead of an ordinary i3 12100F's 4 cores and 8 threads. This one has 6 cores and 12 threads. An alternative when it comes to Intel, I would prefer an i3 12100F, but this CPU right now is basically the same price as the Ryzen 5 5500. But an i3 12100F and a Ryzen 5 5500, I would pick the Ryzen 5 5500 all day every day. This is a quad-core processor, but on my system I'm pairing this CPU with a GTX 1660 Ti. But this is a very powerful CPU, is capable of being paired with GPUs like the RTX 4060, the RX 6750 XT, but the list goes on and on. Now for cooler, I went with the ID Cooling ARGB for around $19. This is a very good CPU cooler. Now for the Ryzen 5 5500, you don't actually need cooler, but for the purpose of the video, because we're building a white gaming PC, I think you have to go with this one. This is a very cheap stock cooler. You can find it at around $19, like I said, on Amazon. But unless if you want to like save a little bit of cash and spray paint your stock cooler, you can actually do that and spray paint your stock cooler with white. That way you can save a little bit of cash and it can still match your color scheme. But for now, we're going to be going with this ID Cooling for $90. And for the motherboard, we're going to be going with this motherboard. Now this is my motherboard. I'm currently using this motherboard with my Ryzen 5 5500. This is the MSI B550MA Pro Max 2 Micro ATX motherboard. This motherboard right now is $880 on Newegg, and on Amazon is basically cheaper on Newegg right now. Now this motherboard is actually capable of fitting CPUs like the Ryzen 5 5600 without the need of you upgrading the BIOS. But one of the things that you will see that's a little bit drawback when it comes to this motherboard is that it has 2 memory slots and a 1 M.2 slot and 4-pin for CPU power connector, which is something that you have to pay attention to when you buy your motherboard. And then when you buy your power supply, you have to be extra careful if your power supply is going to actually be fitted in this power connector. Now overall, this is a good motherboard for around this price range. Now for the RAM, I went with the Timetech Pinnacle 32GB 16GB DDR4 RAM running at 3200 MHz with CL timing of 16 for $44. Now this is a very good set of RAM sticks, so I saw this potential of, hey, these are white sticks of RAM and they are 2x16GB, but at the same time they are $44. This is very cheap right now. Now I know you're thinking like 32 gig isn't like too much, but you actually need 32 gig at some point, especially in 2025. Right now I'm actually gaming with 32 gig of RAM sticks. When I play games like Warzone, my RAMs will be hitting 16 to 17 gigs at some point. I'll be like, what would have been happening if I had 16 gig of RAM? But I guess I would never know since I have 32 gig of RAM. 32 gig of RAM is something I would really consider if you are looking to game in 2025. So for storage, we're gonna go with Clef Cross. This is a 1TB Gen 4. You gotta pay attention to this. You don't really need Gen 4, especially with the MSI B450MX Pro Max 2 motherboard. The reason why is that motherboard only supports PCIe Gen 3. I went with this one because it was cheap and it's reasonable for its price. Gen 3 and the 2s right now are really basically the same price as Gen 4s. So with Gen 4, you can actually save a little bit of cash just in case you upgrade your motherboard to a motherboard that will support Gen 4 in the future. So with this one, Clef Cross Gen 4 NVMe, it's gonna limit our speed to Gen 3 speeds. But at the same time, if we upgrade our motherboard in the future, we're not gonna be having some problems with PCIe Gen speeds because we'll already have a Gen 4 speed NVMe. So I went with this one. This is a 1TB one for around $57. It's very cheap on Amazon. It's not yet available on Newegg. As you can see, there are no Newegg prices or or any other market prices. It's only available on Amazon. And now to pair with our Ryzen 5 5500 for GPU, we're gonna go with the ASRock Challenger Radeon RX 6600 8GB for around $240. Now this is a very excellent GPU. This GPU can definitely play any game on the planet in 1080p. Now for the black version of this graphics card, you can get it at around $210 or maybe $220 at some point, but it's basically the same price as this white one. But since we're going for a white aesthetic look, this is the one that we're going to be going with in this video. Now this GPU is basically often compared with the RTX 3060, but the 3060 at some point it has 12GB of VRAM, which has a little bit of advantage compared to this GPU. But this GPU is basically cheaper with price performance. In most cases, if you're broke but you only have $240 and you want to buy a graphics card, this is basically the graphics card I would prefer. But only if you want to buy a white graphics card. Another white graphics card that I would recommend is the RX 7600. The 7600 is basically better than the 6600, maybe by 15 or maybe even more FPS. This is the graphics card that we are going to be going with. It's a very pretty looking graphics card. ASRock never miss. Now for the case, we're going to be going with something a little bit different. This is the Montech A 108RGB Micro ATX mid-tower case for around $67. This is a very cheap case for a white case because this is a white case. White things are basically expensive when it comes to PC parts in most cases. Sometimes you might find it being the same price as the ordinary black parts. I don't know why, because it's not like white is very difficult to find or maybe it's difficult to paint. It's basically the same thing. Maybe it's basically because people really hype white color schemes compared to the black ones. I don't know, maybe. The market is crazy at some point. So yeah, this is the one that we're going with. This one comes with 4 ARGB fans pre-installed. That is what I like about it. Just like my PC case, the Entech AX61, they come with 4 ARGB fans pre-installed. So for the power supply, we're going to be going with something that's very much useful. Now I like this power supply a lot basically because it's 600 watt, it's wide, and at the same time it's semi-modular, and it's going at around $42. Now this is the APVIA ATX. Now this is a very pretty looking power supply. I basically prefer this power supply because of its looks. It's not top tier power supply, but it's more than enough for the Ryzen 5 5500 and the RX 6600. This is a very good power supply that I would recommend. Now the Ryzen 5 5500 and the RX 6600, you would need something like 500 watts. You don't actually need 600 watt. Remember, you don't actually need aesthetics, but for the purpose of this color scheme, I went with Asia Horse PSU cable extensions. You have to be extra careful when you buy PSU cable extensions, just like this one. This is the one that we need for our motherboard because our motherboard has 4-pin for CPU power connector, and for our GPU this actually kind of like overkill. For our GPU we would need, I think the RX 6600 actually needs 8-pin, and we have our 8-pin right here. That is something you have to actually pay attention to, and every time you buy cable extensions, because you might buy good cable extensions but you might find that they are not supported in your motherboard or maybe your graphics card. Now these cable extensions are $20. You don't need to buy these, but if you're looking for aesthetics, I would really prefer them a lot. Now the total price of this build will be $651.29, so that is as cheap as they come. Now if you find value at this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe obviously, and also if you like this kind of videos, let me know what you think in the comment section, and see you in the next video.